guys use, when you're feeling stressed, any of the university initiatives?
No.
Yoga, Tai Chi?
No.
Maybe we're too introverted. I don't want to socialize with you.
Yeah.
I don't want to tell a random person about my feelings.
Ding, ding, dong, ding, ding, dong. Hi, we're Dr. X.
Dr. Y?
And welcome to our Christmas episode of PhDone, the podcast where we talk or complain about everything in academia and PhD and beyond.
And today, on this Christmas vibe, we talk about burnout, self-care, and maintaining a sense of well-being during our PhD and in academia. So, to start off today, on a scale of 1 to 10, how stressful would you rate doing a PhD? Dr. Y and Dr. Z.
Yeah, so for me, I'd probably say a 5, so quite low. I mean, I think I was actually quite happy for most of the PhD. I didn't have a lot of roadblocks in terms of my data collection or my studies. I was super lucky to have a supportive team of supervisors. I had you guys share my experiences with. How about you? Zee?
Maybe a 6 or 7. I think it's up and down. Because you get the periods when you're really stressed and then sometimes you're not very stressed. I think academia in general, I guess beyond the PhD, academia in general is pretty stressful because basically everything is a competition. You're just like fighting for your life every day.
Yeah.
Find some funding. Try to publish these papers so your contract doesn't end. But yeah, 6 to 7. 6 to 7, I reckon.
For me, I think it took me a year to feel like I'm doing something. Because I think I was working before and I was known to be the efficient one. And getting into the PhD, I was just nowhere feel like I'm efficient or productive at all. I feel like no one's seeing me for my strengths. And then I struggled. I went into PhD thinking they would train my patience because I'm a person without patience and patience is very important in PhD. And I done all my studies 2 years in and then it's all writing up and tending things and that dragged a lot. And that dragging part really made me feel, but I can't remember the frustration, but I will give it a stress level 7.5 out of 10.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
I would actually, and I think I would rate the PhD less stressful than my honours year.
Oh.
I think my honours year was more stressful because it was short and I was completely new.
Yeah. Sort of like honours, your training, pre-training, and then PhD is your training, and postdoc is sort of the job. Now you can actually do the job.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So for me, my PhD is different stages. So first year is really trying to find my feet. And then second year, I felt good because I know what I was doing. I was doing research. I went out the things that I wanted to do. And the third and fourth year, I think the last part of the PhD writing up, I just don't see a end. Because me going back and forth, I just don't see them saying that, yes, you can do it. I just don't see any possibility of that happening. So that really drives up my stress level. So the beginning part and the end part, I will give a much higher stressful rating. But then the middle part where I know what I'm doing, I feel like I can make progress. So what about you guys? Which part of the PhD was easier or harder?
I think most of it was pretty chill. Even after submission, I think I submitted early. I was one of those freaks because so the hardest part for me where my stress was probably at an 8 or a 9 was during the thesis examination. So after submission, when I got my reviews back, that was the hardest part. I was already half a year into my postdoc. And it was it's just such a big it's a big time commitment that had to be done outside of my day job. I got really tough reviews. And frankly I just thought they were stupid. They were unnecessarily tough. And at that point I'm thinking oh shit, this might all, go to shit and what if I fail and all that kind of stuff. So other than that, I think it was pretty good. I mean, there were definitely difficult times during the PhD, but that was more, I think, to do with personal issues. And, like, you know, that time of your life, like the early to mid-20s. So relationship drama, trying to be financially independent, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. But I think it's a common thing because most of people do their PhD from mid-20s to mid-30s. That's sort of like the theme. And then to have that chunk of time, you got to experience like significant life events. Right? Yeah. So it is still socially, it's stressful. It's such a period of time that everyone's changing, everyone's sort of finding their feet, and then you sort of stay the same. And people think, oh, he's just studying. Oh, how cute.
Yeah, I think something we probably already covered before was just that transition from having, you know, deadlines and then to all this freedom. But yeah, it's very hard to know when you're on track. Because I'm one of those people that I'm quite competitive, but I need something to benchmark against to know how well I'm doing. So doing the PhD, it was hard. I'm lucky I had you guys because then I could sort of mark if I was on track. But then if I didn't have that, there's just no way I would know, and then I'd probably get really stressed out. It's like, am I achieving what I should be achieving? Like, am I falling behind? Is there, like, am I late or anything? But I think a tough part of me for my PhD, like, I talked about this before, but, you know, not having money, but also, for some reason, my supervisor didn't let me work as well outside of the PhD. Yeah. And she also made me do it 9 to 5. So I had to come into the office every day, 9 to 5. And even though you're technically a student, so you should really be able to, you know, set whatever you want. And honestly, it's just the end of the project, right? As long as you get that done, that should be fine. But I didn't write all these rigid rules in between because it felt like they made no sense to me. Like, as long as I do the work at the end, or achieve what I need to achieve, like, why does it matter how I get there? Because I think, like, I don't know, maybe I'm just a bit stubborn, but I'm a bit stuck. I know myself very well, and I know how I focus. So sometimes I get bursts of work done, and sometimes I do nothing. But, so I'm not very good when I'm being, you know, micromanaged or being told that I have to do things a certain way. So I found that a bit difficult during my PhD. But eventually, obviously, we got used to it. And I think later on, I was a bit more flexible because my supervisors were less strict with me. Because also my postdoc supervisor, she had to leave sort of halfway through because she had a baby. So then there was no one watching me. So I started doing whatever I wanted.
Yeah, it's funny that, so it seems like it's not like super, super stressful to do a PhD, which is maybe a little bit different to the messaging you get. Well, at least that's just our experiences. Like, it wasn't.
I think because if lab-based people, if the experiments don't work, then it stresses them out. For us, I mean, a lot of my PhD was exploratory work, so it wasn't like, you know, I couldn't fail in that. It was just, I
think for me, like, the stressful part is more psychological, as in that I never feel like I'm doing something, but people see you. I think we covered that in the first 2 episodes as well. Like, you feel like people see you as doing something amazing, like a PhD, oh my God. But then, like, day to day, I don't feel like I'm staying by anyone. I don't feel like I'm contributing anything. And it's just that, and not knowing when you can finish, everyone, like, if you ask people, how's your work? You can actually say things. I'm working with this and this project will end, It's stressful because of that. But with PhD, often it's on your own. For me, after 2 years, people keep asking me, I keep replying the same thing. I'm writing it up. And they're like, oh, okay, so you're going to finish soon. And I'm like, I don't know. And then, how do you not know? And you can't explain how do you not know. So I see so low of myself because of that. And so that's creating the burnout of not seeing as, like, I don't know what, when people ask me, how should I reply and what, like, I'm not making progress in life, that type of, like, rumination rather than the job itself to an extent.
Yeah. I've seen, because I'm supervising a couple of PhD students now, I think the things that they struggle with remind me of what I sort of struggled with at the beginning as well, with things being delayed. Things taking way longer than you thought that they would. Because I guess, like, you know, back in uni, you have, like, these deadlines. It's like, bam, 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 bam. You're doing 6 subjects and you have to do assignments and it's just all done. But this is like, you know, So some of them, they're writing up work on a trial or a cohort study, and then there's a delay in starting. And then they're just like, okay, can we get started this week? So no, we're going to do ethics. Can we get started this week? No, this person came back and we have to change this thing. And then it's just delayed by months and months. And I think it stresses them out. But, you know, as working in the field for a while, I'm like, that's just normal. Exactly what you expect. If things run smoothly, that's very rare.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah.
That's not right.
Yeah. So, Dr. Y, would you say that when you were, like, say, after you got the comments from the reviews for your PhD thesis, did you feel like you were experiencing burnout, like knowing how much you have to do and you have to work as well, and it's also some comments is just ridiculous?
I wouldn't call it burnout because I don't think it was like a build-up of, you know, stress that eventually led me to feeling demotivated. I mean, I definitely felt demotivated and felt like upset about it, but I think it was just stress more so than it was burnout. I don't think at any point I actually felt burnt out during the PhD.
Yeah, I don't think during the PhD I felt burnt out either.
Yeah. I think like what Dr. C said, I do think the reason that I could keep my stress minimal during the PhD was because I wasn't particularly greedy or keen on having to do my studies in a particular way. I know a lot of people come in wanting to make a specific change in the world or, you know, needing to answer this particular research question. But, you know, PhDs, they never work out that way. And I think you need to really treat it like a research training exercise, like work experience almost, not like, oh, this is the project that I'm going to finish. Because it won't work.
I did something really stupid during my PhD because I actually don't know what a PhD or what a researcher does. I just, like, I do it because I'm supposed to do a literature review to identify my hypothesis and da-da-da-da. I did a literature review and, like, my supervisor had looked at it and they were happy with it, right? They were like, oh, okay, you can, that makes sense. And I'm really happy and I submitted to a journal article without telling anyone. And at least everyone else's co-authors and CC them in the email. And then one of my other supervisor just rushed into the room saying, what?
Yeah. Did you include the team?
Yeah, include the team. So they got the email that I submitted to a journal.
Is this just your proposal or was it actually results and stuff? What did you submit it as? Just a research article?
I think I submitted as an opinion piece.
Opinion piece? Oh my god!
Researchers are angry people because wasted people's time.
You're not happy about it. I'm just gonna do my productive shit. I'm gonna, publishing this shit literature review. Yeah, that was bad.
Funny.
That was bad. And I didn't know it was such a delicate process. And I had to retrieve it and send the editor email saying I sent it by accident.
You went through the whole submission process and it's
My fingers slipped.
Something really stupid like, oh, actually none of the co-authors approved this. I can't remember.
Oh yeah, that's so funny.
I know. But that just goes to show how little do I know about the research setting. I just, my heart was just not in that mode. And I just come from service provision. I'll try to prove everyone that I'm a productive person.
Yeah.
If they're happy with my project, I'm gonna publish it. Yeah, so for me, as I said, the first part was a bit stressful. The last part was a bit stressful. So I guess the last bit, I have felt a bit of burnout because waiting for them to get back to me take a very, very long time. And I just don't see it end. And I just feel sad all the time.
Yeah.
What about you, Dr. Z? Ever felt burnout during PhD?
So I remember at the beginning, it was a bit of the literature review was always a bit of a struggle because it's always the first step for everything, right? And you never notice that enough. Like, when is it end?
Yeah.
Unless you're doing systematic review, you never really know when the literature review ends. You kind of just...
Yeah, that's true.
No, I just remembered a stressful part in the first year was our bloody confirmation.
Yes, I remember that as well.
My supervisor made it sound so scary.
Yes, mine did as well.
I know.
Mine did exactly that. Yeah, and then because I've been supervising these 2 PhD students and they recently had to go through this, I told them exactly that. I was like, it's basically nothing. Like, you go up there, they do a presentation, they don't even look at your proposal, they ask you a couple of questions, done. No one ever fails, basically.
Dude, I'm pretty sure one of the panel was sleeping during
Yes.
during the review.
They were sleeping. And there was like no one in the room except the one that's doing the presentation just that time. Yeah. My supervisor was like, oh, 2 months before the actual confirmation, you should do a practice run with everyone in the room, and they're gonna ask questions, they're gonna ask you about this and that. I'm so scared.
Yeah. But that leads into a good point, because I remember maybe not during the confirmation, but we had a couple of other annual reviews, essentially.
Yeah.
And during the annual review, you're supposed to also be able to bring up any issues with your supervisor. But I don't think our university did it that professionally, at least our panel.
No.
Yeah, so I didn't even get that option during my PhD, actually. Like, during those annual reviews, no one asked me, but I have heard stories of other people being asked. The way to do it properly is to ask your supervisor to leave the room. The panel asks the supervisor to leave the room, and then you can say whatever you want, and then they'll come back in, and then, discuss or whatever. But no one asked me that option. Or sometimes they ask you, well, the supervisor's still there. And obviously you can't say anything.
I got a form to fill out beforehand to raise any issue.
Yeah, but I think your supervisor sees that for. So write anything mean. I actually wrote something so nice. The panel was like, wow, this is the best. Complimentary of this supervisor before.
But with my colleague at the same department as me and Dr. Y, her supervisor, which was our supervisor, actually during the supervision meeting said that he wasn't happy with this person.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then every 3 months or 6 months, they had to catch up with the head of school after the annual progress review just to check in. And she cried with the head of school. And yeah,
I think we're quite lucky to have supervisors that were pretty decent. They weren't awful. Yeah.
Yeah, I was mentoring PhD students. One of the students, during her annual progress review, her supervisor wrote something that she doesn't have a growth mindset.
Doesn't have a what?
A growth mindset. A growth mindset you have.
What?
A growth method?
Mindset. Like
what?
Like a mindset. Like it's a growth mindset.
You keep saying it. I don't know what it means.
Growth mindset.
Can you spell it?
A growth mindset.
Mine. Sounds like a growth method. I will grow well.
And her supervisor made everyone to come to the lab at 5 a.m. because he wants to finish at 3 p.m.
What?
So everyone had to start work super early. And she said that sometimes the building, because they keep all the rats, and it's still dark, and you go into this building and you can't turn on the light until a certain time, and sometimes it's just really scary to do that at 5 a.m. And then the supervisor didn't write anything, but just didn't approve her. Said that she had enough progress because she didn't have growth mindset.
Wow.
And then
Strange.
it's so strange. But she was like, I didn't feel I can say anything. He was so scary. I didn't feel like I can do anything. Yeah, so then it was a whole procedure, and she was so stressed out because she's an international student.
Yeah.
So she was scared that her visa going to be cancelled, and she had to go through all the school trying to find new supervisors. So when I felt her, she was not in a good space. She was so, yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of pretty terrible ones. So that one I told you about before, where the supervisor wouldn't let the student be the first author on the paper. So that actually got escalated to the top of this university, essentially. So she actually made a complaint, and it became like a proper HR problem. And then she had to, it got escalated pretty far because that supervisor was just really shit, essentially, and it just ruined that whole PhD student's experience and life.
Yeah. So did you guys do anything self-care wise during your PhD when you're feeling down and going through that difficult period?
You guys were my self-care.
Yeah.
Oh. That would be my biggest tip. I think that goes for all of us, right? To
Yeah.
build a
Yeah.
network
Yeah.
of people who are going through the same things.
Yeah.
But also, if you can, include a recently graduated postdoc,
Mm.
because they'll give you hope and advice that there's
Mm,
life on the other side.
yeah. For me, it's the same. I think nothing else really works except talking to peers.
Mm.
I think it's a unique process and people don't really understand. And it sounds minor to other people.
Yeah.
So it's a frustration that's quite unique to that period. I think when I first started my PhD, I think I also talked about this in our first episode.
Mm.
I googled and all these things I thought I can manage.
Mm.
Mm.
Like why a PhD is stressful, right? Managing supervisors, and then the things that may delay. I'm like, that's small things.
Mm.
Why do people so stressed out about that? But then when you're in there, you do feel it, and I think the best way to deal with it is talking to people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Z, you have any special tips? A trip to Disneyland?
Actually, yeah, that was pretty fun. Conferences were pretty fun. That's one of the highlights of the PhD, I would say. Things to look forward to, I guess. Yeah, I found it really tricky to just balance the thought that, because for PhD for me, it was just a huge assignment, essentially. I was still a student. It was just a big ass assignment that I had to do in 3 years. And so I wanted to live life like a student, like I always had like for the last 15 years of my life or whatever it was, right? But then being forced to think of it like a job, I think I really struggled with. But at the end of the day, it is just a big ass assignment, right? So if it's not good for your mental health, you got to put your mental health first. So if you're not enjoying it, you're experiencing toxicity with your supervisor or anything, you should really just put yourself first. And I feel like these supervisors who take it too seriously, or because actually from the supervisor's perspective, this PhD student is doing work for them as part of their grant or whatever. And then whatever the outcome is, they claim it as part of their grant. So you're literally just working for them. And so they don't really, the supervisors that aren't that great don't really care about you or your mental health or anything. They just see you as outputting this thing. Because I think supervisors also get paid for each thesis submitted or whatever on time. So sometimes they don't put your mental health first. And I think just reiterating the fact that sometimes you are a student and just put less pressure on yourself. Even though the expectations are high, I feel like they shouldn't be that high. So just don't put so much pressure on yourself, I think.
And look for the conferences.
Yeah.
Apply for international conference that you're like, for work, yay, I feel important.
Yeah, take advantage of all the student discounts you get.
Yeah.
Thank you. I miss having a concession card.
It's half the price.
Yeah.
Adult.
So, do you think the expectation changes as you move into a paid position, like a postdoc? Like, what part of the academic life are the most stressful to you now?
I think if I had to rate the postdoc the same way we rated the PhD, it would be definitely hovering at a higher 7 to 8. Sometimes, higher, sometimes lower.
Yeah.
I think the most stress-inducing part of academic life is definitely the instability of the job. And for me, the non-stop competitiveness that you you have no choice to partake in. Especially because I'm not an inherently competitive person. I'm a driven person, but kind of have no choice because jobs in academia come from funding. Funding comes from the track record. So it is inevitably a race. And every decision you make about how to spend your time is one that potentially defines your future. Right? It's really, really tiring because you constantly have to keep that all in your mind. It's not just like, do I analyze this data? It's, do I analyze this data or do I go to that meeting to make a good impression, to make networks? Or do I stop this analysis now because it'll get published faster for an extra publication? All that stuff is constantly you're weighing up your options.
What about you, Dr. Z?
So I think I've spoken about this before. I have a different mentality to why, because I don't want to stay in academia, so I'm not trying to push myself to do that much. So for me, it's kind of just a job. I'm just working for my supervisor and doing research. So I think it is definitely more stressful, but from my perspective, it's harder than the PhD Actually, it's easier than the PhD in the way that the PhD was all on you. It was your baby project. It was everything that you did. No, you couldn't depend on anybody else. Your successes were the project successes and your failures were the project failures. But here, I'm working for someone else. So I can always sort of defer to someone else for the decision making. And if the project fails, it's not on me. It's not my baby, right? It's my supervisor's project. So in that way, it's sort of less pressure. If just from a work perspective. But then, you know, of course, there's also the other side where you're supposed to be building your own career, and that is a whole different thing. Yeah.
I wonder how does it work when you transition out of a postdoc? Say that you got a fellowship. Do you stay with your department, or can you actually take the fellowship to another department?
You can. It just depends on what you propose to do with the fellowship. So you could say, I'm going to stay in my department and do X, Y, and Z. So you stay, but you've got your own project. Or you could ask someone, like I could go back to my PhD supervisor and be like, I want to do a fellowship, but I'm in your group kind of thing.
Right.
So you could move around.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, on what Z was saying as well, like, it's hard, I think, for me, because it's not necessarily that I want to stay in academia. Like, I do because I like research.
Yeah.
But, like, academia, like, you have to, like, keep going, like, just in order to stay in this job. So negotiating that conflict of values, like personal integrity and purpose of other things, is just so hard. Like, I just want to be a good researcher.
I guess for me, if three of us are on the spectrum, I think will be most close to, like, following the trajectory. Yeah, and then, like, in the middle way.
I'm going to GTFO as soon as I can.
Me, I'm always sort of like, not sure. I'm more leaning towards I don't want to work in this field, but, you know, I tag along type of thing. Because I think for me, part of me, I'm really scared to get into that mindset and then knowing how behind I am with others. So for me, it's a protective thing. Like, you know, whatever, I don't care about this, you know, I'll just do it as we go, but not really thinking about having a plan. I remember having one of my meeting with the department head, and he was talking to me about, you know, how do you position yourself? What do you want from the job? You know, how you want to light up your publication so you can become something in some field.
Yeah.
And I was like, but I just want to work with you guys.
Exactly.
And he's like,
I just want to do research and be a good worker.
And he said, no, that's not. Unfortunately, it's a very good thinking, but it's not good enough. You need to really think about your own career. Yeah, so I'm still, like, behind on that spectrum. I think part of me still hasn't said that I need to adapt that mindset.
Yeah. No, I think that'll come naturally, though, because it was the same for me. I think the first, like, 1 to 2 years post-PhD, you have, like, nothing. You have, like, 2 publications, and you're like, what is me and my little 2 publications going to achieve? Like, but I think, like, your record builds, like, it snowballs naturally just the longer you stick around, like, even if you're not trying that hard. But yeah, now being in kind of like the 3rd year out, it's changing more to, am I really cut out to be a long-term academic?
Right.
And whether I'm passionate enough about something to stay in here. Because when I see senior academics, they like live and breathe their stuff. Like, but I'm not like that. Like, I just want to do a good job and meaningful work, and I'm happy.
Yeah. Side note, as a early researcher, female academic, do you think about planning? Because how much behind? Because also getting to the age that, you know, if you're thinking about starting a family, you may take 1 or 2 years off, and getting back, you may want to just take part-time or 2 or 3 days. And then you know, is that going to affect your decision whether to stay here or?
So for me, I'm a planner, right? I've literally got it all mapped out when I should apply for fellowships, when I get them. So if I do, let's say, have a kid in the next few years, I plan out my maternity leave and when I can take it. because we're all on contract work and there's certain specifications of when you can take maternity leave and the duration between when you take it and the end of your contract. So if you take it beyond a certain point, you can no longer get that paid maternity leave. So you have to be very strategic and plan everything out. It's a lot more stressful than what guys have to go through. Like, fuck guys. I don't think about any of this. But I guess that's why usually the higher ups are all male professors. Because, I think it's I suppose relatively recent change that they're trying to make it more fair, but still it's inherently unfair for females.
Yeah. It is. Yeah. It definitely is. And I think I've heard a lot of people trying to negotiate, like, oh, is it taboo to, like, take the full 12 months off?
What?
Like, does it seem like I don't care? Or, like, I think a lot of people feel pressured to come back earlier. But also because, I mean, we have this thing called relative to opportunity, right? Where you're allowed to write in, I was off having a child for 12 months. But sometimes I feel like females ruin it for other females by staying productive during that time and claiming it anyway.
Yeah.
When I think about that kind of...
Yeah. Me. You just gotta do whatever you can to get ahead. That's the cutthroat world of academia, really.
Yeah. And it's not even because you want to actually be the best. It's because you want a job.
Yeah, exactly.
You want to keep your job.
Yeah.
Kind of crazy.
Because when I think about it, right, because now, like, my contract got extended for another 6 months, and then people's like, oh, it's okay, every now and then there will be opportunity comes up, and now I have offers like, oh, 2 months working on this, or, for the next 10 weeks, can you work like 0.5? I just put pieces together to construct a job. And how is that, like, I can see it's going to be stable enough if I ever consider having a family, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You do become a bit used to it. Like, when I tell people in, like, corporate or whatever, oh, yeah, my contract got extended for 12 months, yay! And they're like, well, why are you panicking? Like, I just go, oh, that's just how it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you think the stress you have now is different to the stress that you had in PhD?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, I think when you're in the pitch, you feel it's safe, right? Like you have a identity. It's safe to stay behind it. Because once that's off, it's like a sticker tape. Once you lift it, and then now it's like a race. Off you go. If you don't run,
Go.
Yeah, it's like Squid Game. But then the PhD was like the sticker tape. It's if you don't peel it off, it's fine. It doesn't count.
How do you guys deal with it? Do you deal with it?
Yeah. So I think early on in the first 2 years of my postdoc, I got pretty burnt out. So I think it was just changing my whole mentality about it.
Yeah.
So I did read this thing where they said you should just really treat it like a job. So there was once I read this thing where someone in the department died, essentially. And then the department was basically like, oh, that's so sad. Okay, how do we replace them? So honestly, like, you're just a worker to them, right? They don't really care. You could give your whole life to this company, the department, the university, and they're just thinking about how to replace you when you leave, essentially. So I think just having that, it is just a job. So you shouldn't try and sacrifice as much as you can to get ahead or for this job, because honestly, they don't care. Like, as harsh it is, because I had a lot of anxiety when my boss was working from home. So, my boss is a bit of a micromanager. And I had this kind of pressure that I had to constantly be on my emails. So I had the alerts on my phone, had the alerts on my laptop, and every time I saw a new notification saying I had a new email, I would just freak the fuck out. Seriously, I would just have heart palpitations. I'm like, oh my god, what is it? What do I need to do right now? And there was once I accidentally left my emails on overnight, and I heard it in the middle of the night when I was sleeping. The ding of the email, and I couldn't sleep after that. I had to get up and check the emails. It was so unhealthy. So eventually I learned that I just took it off my phone. I took all the notifications off. It was because when you're working from home, I feel like there's no separation. You're literally your work and your home, it just overlaps, and it's very hard to separate the two. But it's just about changing that mentality where it's not going to be the end of the world if you don't do this. And I think it's also, as time went on, my supervisor had a little more trust in me, and I felt a little more comfortable sort of not having to reply immediately. But it takes a while before you get to that stage, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is really bad. It was kind of eye-opening. Like a couple of weeks ago, we had like a seminar with early career researchers, and we were talking to like faculty leadership about like concerns around COVID and career progression and all these kind of things. And one of the guys basically said, like one of the faculty leadership, he said, research staff are basically a burden to the university, like money-wise.
Okay.
And so the message was like, basically, don't ask for money. Like, don't ask for stability because, research is not a money-generating exercise for the university. That's what he said.
Yeah.
And I get it. But, like, research is where all the prestige is, for the university and all that.
Yeah.
So it's just, it's kind of deflating to realize that.
Yeah. I think for me as well, like, it's with my coordination role, there's always these things that I have to put on together, and because they don't make decisions, so often it's like 1 week before we all gonna meet up somewhere, and then they just agree that day. And in a few days' time, I have to set up everything, make sure that everything's working. So we'll be going into the office on Sunday, checking all the things, and then no one really appreciates that either. Yeah, but then I realized they're just gonna be up and downs, and to really enjoy the down period, and it's gonna go up again, and then to take that as part of life.
Yeah, I feel like I'm doing that right now. I'm taking as much downtime as I can because I expect when the highs are there, it's so much anxiety and just like go. So I take as much downtime as I can. I feel bad about it. That's the other thing. You get guilt about not writing, not being productive.
Yeah.
But I guess it's sort of, you just gotta learn to live with it, or be like me and just be in denial. Like, it's okay, it doesn't matter. I'm gonna stay here.
What do you guys think of? So I was in one of the seminar about, again, early career, whatever, and this guy was like, sometimes you, in the postdoc position, you need to think about how you can create a position for yourself. Like, you need to know,
like a niche.
Yeah, but also, like, he said that he created a position for himself because he spoke to, because there's a New South Wales Health, and saying that you really need a researcher position to help you understand this, and they just created that. But that's not me. I don't see myself just go to some people and saying that, hey, you need this position.
I struggle with those parts. Like, when it's not in your character, be a certain way. Like, but I feel like to be a successful academic, you have to be such a jack of all trades. Like, you need to be, people need to like you. You need to be smart. You need to be, able to handle all the social media stuff. Like, so many things.
Any other self-care tips for your current work? Like, spa day?
Have your buddies. I sound like a broken record, but seriously, you need buddies. Oh, also, what's been really helpful for me is having a mentor. So I signed up for this mentorship program really early on. And it's cool because they use like personality tests to match you with someone.
Oh.
And they matched you with someone like anywhere in the country who works like in a broadly related area, but different enough that you'll never cross paths. So there's no like conflict of interest.
Interesting. That's
It was really cool. And I got a super cool professor from a different state, and like it was only supposed to be for 12 months, but 3 years later we're still catching up, which is super generous of her. But she's, it's good to talk to her in terms of getting insight into how to, especially navigating tricky relationships with supervisors, and how to like have those conversations about extending your contract, how to set boundaries, all those kinds of things. And also she helps as like reminding me how far I've actually come. So someone who just gives you like support from like a professional standpoint.
Yeah, that's true. Also, you also have a mentor, right?
She's not an official mentor, but she's just someone more senior to me. I guess our office or our little team, not little 30 people team, is I feel like it's a bit of a flat structure. So even though like my mentor, quote unquote, is associate professor, she's like, it's just my boss at the top and everyone's flat at the bottom. All PhD students, all RAs, all associate professors, we're all the same. Like
dictatorship.
Yeah. So she just talks to me like any like this on the same level essentially. So it was really helpful because I worked with her during when I first came into the team. So she's just very down to earth, and she gets a lot of shit sometimes as well. So and it's interesting talking about how she navigates it. And
I think for me one of the helpful things was also from a senior, but that was during my PhD. But also to your point, a senior person in my department showed how much criticism or feedback she gets from my supervisor. And that's like the point that I realized, it's just not just me, because I was feeling that I was so like incompetent. Yeah.
So do you guys think that being an academic is more stressful than any other jobs? All the other jobs out there, I guess?
For me, with the experience of, working on the other jobs, definitely.
It is?
It is. But my job is also chill. It's community work, so everyone's nice, and we're not getting paid as much as academics, but then it's so great that we don't work after certain hours. and we used to do good stuff, We would spend like a day just decorating a room for someone's like a special day. Or everyone would just like bring flowers on Women's Day, give to each other. Like we're just good people.
Yeah.
Work was actually feeling really good going to work, and everyone cared about you, and it's just a different environment. But I think the general, because it's a community sector, so I can't say for corporate, but then it was great that no one sends email after 5. If I send an email after 5, I'll get email from the people saying that, hey, I really do appreciate if you don't send it after 5.
Wow.
And people will pull me out to say that, hey, you don't work that hard, it's not worth it, you need to look after yourself. It's just the environment is so different.
I think the team and the people are really important, and they kind of define your working life. But I guess that's the other thing, right? People say that if you're passionate about it, you don't work a day in your life. If you're passionate about what you do, you don't work a day in your life, right? But I think I've come to realize I'm no longer passionate about what I do. And that's why I feel this way.
I'm working every day of my life.
So I get all these comments on Twitter sometimes where they're like, you should feel grateful to be in academia because, you get so much creativity and freedom and to pursue your passion, essentially. And I think that was true, or that's at least what I thought when I first went into it. But I'm just, it's just a job for me now. And I'm not passionate about it. So going back to that thing, I would say things like people like YouTubers, let's say, they work 24/7, but they love what they do. So technically, they don't work a day in their life almost. But I don't know. What do you think? Why?
So things like competitiveness and that sort of thing, I think is definitely the same in other places. Like you can get that, and poor work-life balance. Like my friends who are corporates or lawyers and things like that can have really poor work-life balance as well. But the very defining feature of academia is definitely the instability. I think that's very unique. But also when I speak to like corporates, lawyers, even other people in health and medical professions, they experience a lot of sexism and racism. Like that's something they struggle with that I feel like universities, at least in Australia, deal pretty well with. So we don't have that added layer of that glass ceiling as much.
Work-life balance in Australia is pretty good. So if you're thinking of like comparing across Australia, then academia may be like a little more stressful. But then if you're looking at, like Asia, it's crazy. Like Asia is just not like working anywhere else. There is literally no work-life balance at all. And there's no real mental health care there. So I remember when I went to Malaysia to see a couple of mates, one of them came to dinner and he got a phone call from his office, and it was just like talking, and then he hung up. He's like, someone hung themselves in our office. Like it was just a normal thing that happened. Because and also he had to go back to work after the dinner as well, because they just it's crazy. Like
it is crazy.
So in a way, I'm thankful.
I think a lot of the lack of work-life balance in academia is self-inflicted. You can choose not to, And some people are quite successful even doing that. It's just got to be super smart during your work hours.
Yeah.
Mm.
X, do you want to say anything on this?
Yes, so I remember watching a documentary and this. Oh yeah, I went back to China, and then I went to the university, and so I was talking about life here, and they were chatting among themselves because I was giving a talk on mental health, and they were like, "Yeah, it's super important. Like last year, 3 of the professors died."
Oh my god. From overwork?
So it's not. Yeah, they just died suddenly. Like they were doing exercise and just died. And I think it was from stress, and they were like, yeah, that person didn't was trying to read up papers for 2 weeks straight. He didn't sleep well, and he was early 40 or something like that. And so I was like, because at one point I was like, maybe I should consider moving to somewhere else and stuff like that. Nah.
I don't want to die.
Yeah, and 3 professors in a year is what? It's crazy. Yeah.
Okay.
So have you guys used, when you're feeling stressed, any of the university initiatives? Like resources EPA or
No.
yoga, Tai Chi?
No.
Maybe we're too introverted. I don't want to socialize with you.
Yeah.
I don't want to tell a random person about my feelings. I mean, maybe it's a good thing that it's never gotten, I've never felt the need to take it that far. It's always just, I've been more supportive before that. I've definitely taken those free wellbeing days that we were talking about.
I think it's good. It's much more practical than saying that we run this Tai Chi session during lunch break over Zoom.
But I think the well-being day was kind of also a bit tokenistic. So our university gave us a couple of well-being days, quote unquote, which is, they said it was days of leave, but it wasn't days of leave that you put in the system. It was just days of leave you negotiate with your supervisor. So if your supervisor said no, you just don't take that leave. So I feel like it's a bit kind of tokenistic. It's like, oh, look, we're trying to do all this stuff. But reality, it's just your supervisor determines whether you can take it or not. So if you have a shitty supervisor, which is causing you to stress out, and you need the well-being day, you have to take it.
No, you can't. You don't probably even feel comfortable to say it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the other thing that's a bit different about academia. Because if your boss is crappy, they can't be replaced. Because they're the ones that funding is attached to them, and they hire their own team. So in any other department, if there was something really bad going on, HR would probably step in and maybe transition that manager to a different team, or you can make a complaint about them, or they can get someone to replace them. Academia, it's not like that. You have to be the one who moves if you don't like your boss.
Yeah, exactly. They wrote in the system, they just the PhD candidate whose supervisor was so bad, and everyone sort of in the department sort of knows it's ridiculous that everyone has to start working at 5 just so that he can finish work at 3. It's his biological clock. And everyone apparently in that sort of field knows about him being a bit of a dickhead, but nothing you can do. So the PhD candidate have ended up moving up to another whole discipline, to chemistry, as a result. She was in cancer research. Oh, wow. So any other resources for support that you need?
I think in general, universities are quite good with providing, it's there. The support is there if you need it. I've never accessed it, so I don't personally know how effective it is. But at least on the surface level, they seem very keen for you to maintain your well-being.
Don't they just have to have that? Don't all companies have to have that now?
Yeah. I thought no one really actually goes to this sort of thing, but then we have this shared calendar system. Yeah, and I saw so many of my colleagues booking these sort of things, how to manage your expectations and workshops on strategies, Tai Chi's and breathing technique. They all go to that.
Yeah.
All right.
Shall we wrap up?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for listening in again. So comments below on what you use as self-care tips for your mental health and well-being. And if you enjoy this video, please like and subscribe.
Yeah. We will be back in probably a month or 2 weeks. We're taking a little break ourselves. So our videos might be coming out a bit later than usual. But yeah, everyone have a good break. Bye. Bye.